Welcome into the Solo Shot Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Dom Manna. Happy Solo Shot Saturday, everyone. And you may have noticed that I am not in the beautiful ETV Community Media Center. There are no fancy lights and curtains and set design because I'm currently out of town, ready to celebrate two of my favorite people, Mike and Gab. Staines will be getting wed later today, so I just wanted to do a quick toast to Mike and Gab. I talked about my concussion a little bit when Tim Wakefield passed away and how that was a dark time for me. And Tim Wakefield said some things that day that I carried with me for the rest of my time. But Mike and Gab were there for me every day. So I really appreciate and love them. And I'm so excited to be able to celebrate them today. But there still must be a show. The show must go on. And right now, their big buzz topic has been Ronel Blanco, who threw the first no-hitter of 2024, got tossed from a game for apparently using rosin on his non-throwing arm, which per the current league rules on sticky substances, rosin should be completely allowed. But he was thrown out of the game nonetheless. The umpire who threw him out said that it was the stickiest substance he had felt in the time that they've been doing tests. Now, Houston is very hot. Rosin and the gloves, like it can get very sticky. Plenty of former players and people with more experience with rosin and gloves and heat have weighed in on this topic. But I do think that this is getting a lot more traction because he plays for the Houston Astros. And despite the fact that the sign stealing trash can banging scandal is pushing a decade old now, people are still honed in and hyper focused on everything that they do going forward, saying, when are they going to slip up again? When are they going to try to gain an advantage again? And I thought that this was all swept under the rug when the Astros beat the Phillies in the World Series, with the majority of that trash banging core out of town. But nonetheless, Ronel Blanco, a guy who should be, I think, praised as a late breakout. This is a guy who didn't start pitching until he was in his late teens and didn't make the show now until his late 20s, and is breaking out as a starting pitcher for a perennial playoff contender. The spin rate and stuff that Ronel Blanco was showing in his outing that he got tossed was nothing out of the ordinary from what we've seen from him this season. So either he's been cheating every single game, or the umpires got it wrong for different circumstances. Maybe he used a little bit more rosin than typically. Maybe the umpires just were a little bit hyper-focused. But the 3 innings before, when they checked him, there was no problem. So I'm not sure exactly what reaction happened, but Ronel Blanco has been in the news, and there's been a lot of backlash that I think is mainly unnecessary because of the cap that he wears. If Ronel Blanco played for the Oakland A's, I don't think that this would be as big of a story as it currently is right now. So Ronel Blanco, I have a feeling that once this suspension and hearing process is done, will come back and be relatively the same pitcher he was before, because I don't think he was cheating every single game. He didn't have an uptick in velocity. He didn't have an uptick in spin rate. This is the kind of pitcher that he has developed into. But nonetheless, people are going to find reasons to talk about this and make a bigger deal out of it than nothing because of the team that he plays for. But let's stay away from the negatives today. It's a beautiful day, and not only for what I'm here to celebrate, but just in terms of the weather starting to get really nice. And baseball has some best kept secrets. If you listen to a ton of other major media and baseball podcasts, you've heard about Mason Miller. I've talked about him on this podcast as well. Now Kyle Tucker is finally starting to get some buzz this past week after I talked about his strong start to the month last weekend. But there's one guy in baseball who is becoming the best kept secret, I think, in the entire American League. and that is Mr. Ryan Jeffers of the Minnesota Twins. This is the guy who came up for a cup of coffee at 23 years old during the COVID season and showed real promise, batting 273 with a 355 on base and a 436 slug, good for a 119 OPS plus. He hasn't played a full season since, partially due to injuries, partially due to being sent up and down. And he kind of broke out last season a little bit. He didn't get to 100 games, but in a 96 game sample size, he had 276 batting average with a 369 OPS and a 490 slugging. That was good for a 135 OPS plus. Legitimate hitter numbers. And that was good enough for 14 home runs. Right now, it is May 18th. Ryan Jeffers has 10 home runs in 38 games, and he's not slowing down. This is a guy who's right around where he was last year, 275 batting average, 355 on base, 595 slug, which is third in baseball. And he is hitting for a 169 OPS plus clip right now. I will get to it later with the current standings about a quarter of the way through the season now. But Ryan Jeffers is a huge part of the Twins offense and why the Twins are currently in the mix in the AL Central, which has been the most improved division thus far this season. They have been in it because of Ryan Jeffers helping out that offense that has lost some guys over the years, has had some injuries, Royce Lewis going down early in the season. Ryan Jeffers has stepped up in a big way, and I'm planting my flag now. He is going to be an all-star catcher. I think that he's going to be able to continue the success he's had the first couple months through the Midsummer Classic and beyond. And I think that you're looking at a legitimate 30-40 home run guy in Ryan Jeffers at the catcher position, which is a true game changer for any offense, let alone the Twins, which is a team that has a lot of homegrown talent, a team that doesn't historically have a ton of power hitters, but Ryan Jeffers has broken out and is here to stay. So baseball's best kept secret. Ryan Jeffers, I don't know if he'll ever get the national love until the All-Star voting commences and he gets selected either by the fans or by the coaches after the fact, if there's a more popular choice like Salvador Perez, who's a bigger name. But Ryan Jeffers is all-star quality, and he is not getting enough attention by baseball or the national media. Keeping it leveled, up and down. And the St. Louis Cardinals, who are affectionately my National League team, have gotten off to a real rough start. This is arguably the worst baseball that Paul Goldschmidt has played since his rookie year. And even though they're right there with the Reds at the bottom of the division, almost 20 wins, they're not the bottom of the bottom. This is a team that had legitimate World Series hopes when they traded for Nolan Arenado in 2022. And they have been a huge, utter disappointment thus far, whether it be this offseason where they really needed pitching and instead of going after Yamamoto or Snell or trading for a bigger arm with the amount of young outfielders and infielders they have in their system, they signed Sonny Gray, who I still think was a very good value, but they go out there and they bring Kyle Gibson and Lance Lynn back, guys that are quality inning eaters, but not going to help you take that next step, especially when they're replacing similar types of guys in that rotation with Adam Wainwright leaving over the summer. So the St. Louis Cardinals, it's kind of the end of this era for this team, and I think that they're very close to blowing this whole thing up. Ali Marmol got an extension, and I don't think he's going to finish that extension. This has been really hard to watch process-wise. There's been some bad luck, but when you have a team that has talented pieces but isn't putting it together, that is the recipe for a sell. If you can get quality prospects for guys like Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado, Ryan Helsley out of the bullpen, Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson to contenders that need a fifth starter to eat some innings. You have to make those moves. And the important thing about knowing when to sell is the timing. You have to sell right. And if you wait until the obvious bad teams start selling, you might not be able to get the top tier prices you want. So I think the Cardinals need to go into sell mode as early as they can. And it's a real shame because as a guy who is fond of the Cardinals, they're my National League team, as I said. When they traded for Paul Goldschmidt, I was like, oh, that's a really good deal. And the baseball fans in St. Louis are really going to appreciate the way Paul Goldschmidt plays baseball. And then they go out there and there's rumors about Nolan Arenado joining him on the corners. And I just was drooling over that possibility. Typically, when some dream scenario is made for a player that's on the trade market or hits free agency, it never ends up coming to fruition. But Nolan Arenado, nonetheless, was traded from the Rockies to the Cardinals. The Rockies are paying part of his salary, and the Cardinals did not have to give up Nolan Gorman or any of their Jordan Walkers at the moment. So they have a ton of potential major leaguers, quadruple A players, good triple A players. They have a ton of those guys in the infield and outfield right now. And there's no reason to keep them all with the way this team's currently going. You believe in one or two of them, that's great. Keep them around for the next iteration of this team. But I think the Cardinals have plenty of ammo to move things around. I think they could have made a big trade this past off season in the winter if they were more willing to kind of face the lights here with the current situation of the team. But nonetheless, a team that's 7 games back, that has had this much negativity surrounding them, that has had this much disappointment surrounding them for multiple years now. It is just absolutely gut-wrenching to see. Nolan Arenado is a player that I really respect. He has not seemed right the last couple of years. I'm not sure if he's playing through an injury. I'm not sure if he is just starting to kind of take that downward spiral that all the legends do in their careers when they start to fade off a little bit. But it's just not seeming to be title town in St. Louis right now, which was the expectation a few years ago. And it's time to sell before it's too late. And you end up like the Red Sox did not that long ago, where they had a plenty of members of that 2018 World Series core that they weren't able to move just because they thought they were going to maybe sneak into the wild card spot when they had a bunch of expiring contracts, guys fading off to the end of their value. It's important to know when to cut bait. And I hope that the Cardinals are willing to do that because their fan base deserves some direction. It deserves a new leash on life. And the St. Louis Cardinals, honestly, haven't had a positive thing come out in the last year and a half, 2 years. And for a team that is perennial winners, a team that is relatively well run, that isn't necessarily acceptable. And as a Red Sox fan, I've had to deal with similar things, but there was a process. There was an in Heim we trust thing where he's supposed to build up the farm system. And now we have some of these real blue chip hitting prospects in our minor leagues that will be hopefully part of the next Red Sox World Series title down the road. The Cardinals don't really have that going on right now. A lot of their stud prospects are up in the major leagues being mid, and a lot of their paid highly superstar veterans are not playing like superstars. So just a tragic thing to see, especially as a person that loves to follow the Cardinals and tune into their games on KMOX. Even the tone on the broadcasts has not been one of belief that they'll turn things around and uh, anything's possible in baseball. I'm not saying their season's over, but I am saying that they should face the music and they should begin to start calling around and being some of the first at the table to sell for this year's deadline. Here at the Solo Shot Sports Podcast, we like to throw back down the third base line to this day in baseball history. And May 18th is a beautiful date, not just for Mike and Gab, but for baseball. There have been so many amazing games. There are two Hall of Fame birthdays. Hall of Famers Brooks Robinson and Reggie Jackson, Mr. October, were born on May 18th in different years, obviously. But there was a story that I didn't really believe was real until I looked into it. And just had to share this with you. A lot of people are talking about a strike possibly coming uh, with the players not trying to play. But on this date in 1912, there was a Philadelphia Athletics Detroit Tigers game, which ended in a final score of 24-2. But the reason why this happened was because superstar player Ty Cobb, the Georgia Peach, 3 days earlier went into the stands at Hilltop Park during a game against the New York Highlanders and beat down a fan, Claude Luker, who was saying all kinds of disgusting insults about Cobb, his sisters, and his mom. Ty Cobb charged into the stands after getting egged on by Hall of Fame teammate Sam Crawford. You gonna take that? And Ty Cobb beats this man, Luker, who only had one hand. So it was not a good look for baseball to have one of its biggest superstars do that. Now, American League President Ban Johnson was in attendance at the park. He witnessed it. He summoned Cobb to his hotel room to hear his version of the events. And Johnson suspended Check 1, 2. Oh man, so we lost audio here, and I'm not sure at what point in the story we lost audio because I was reading my notes on the game. But to recap, May 18th, 1912. 3 days earlier, May 15th, Ty Cobb went into the stands and beat down a one-armed heckler, Mr. Luker, then was suspended indefinitely by Ban Johnson. Huey Jennings was informed that while the Tigers players, his teammates, did not like Cobb, they were willing to hold out and protest. So he had to put together tryouts and field a replacement team, which encompassed two professional boxers, amateur boxers, a bunch of college and semi-pro players, including Alan Travers, who was pitching at St. Joseph's College, and the three coaches, Huey Jennings, Deacon McGuire, um, just playing the field at first base and catcher. Travers ended up being the first Catholic priest to ever play baseball because after his graduation from St. Joseph's, he went on to study with the Jesuits and got ordained into the priesthood. And he is endearingly coined the man who saved the Tigers because the Tigers, after this shellacking of a game where the Connie Mack A's laid down bunts and put out so many fires, ended up having a 24-2 win against his replacement team. It was the only game that these amateur players ever got to play in the major leagues, and they got absolutely shellacked. And they are a footnote in what ended up being a pennant-winning year for the Tigers. Once they got Cobb back, everything seemed to turn around, and they won the World Series in 1913. So all of this happened. I'm not sure how much of the story got cut out. I apologize for that. I did not see it, but it's really comic book level stuff. That the first organized player strike happened after a player did something that was unprofessional and in the wrong, and they had to replace with basically people off the street, and the coaches had to play just to avoid a $5,000 fine, which at the time was huge, huge money. Now, we're about a quarter way through the season. Most teams have played over 42 games, which is where I consider the quarter point in the season. And there are three teams that have 30 plus wins: the Philadelphia Phillies, the Los Angeles Dodgers, and the New York Yankees. Not too shocking to hear big market teams like that winning their divisions, but there's been a lot of other fun things. And it's not just that the Orioles are very good at baseball, 28-14. The Rays are over 20 wins. My Red Sox have over 20 wins. They're just under 500. And the Blue Jays are just under 20 wins. So the AL East is a monster. Who would have guessed? But the real monster is the AL Central. Cleveland, 28 wins. Kansas City, 27 wins. The aforementioned Minnesota Twins, 24 wins. And it is just crazy that the Tigers at 500 are still improved from last year. The White Sox, like I said, their season's done, but the fact that the division is improved as it is absolutely amazing to see. The Houston Astros have overtaken the Oakland A's already, like I said they would do. And the Mariners have passed the Rangers in the West. It looks like those three teams, Houston, Texas, and Seattle, are all going to be in contention for the division and for playoff spots. The Philadelphia Phillies have been super awesome to watch and are ahead of the Braves currently, who have 26 wins, still a very good baseball team. In the Central, it's looking like it's coming down between the Brewers and the Cubs, with Pittsburgh is a team on the rise with Paul Skeens, who, after having a decent debut, struck out 11 the other day. The Cubs have two of the lowest ERA starters in baseball, have 25 wins or 2 games back. And I talked about the Cardinals and the Reds. The Reds have Ellie De La Cruz, who's stolen 30 bases in 40 something games, with only getting caught 5 times, which is amazing, but absolutely gut wrenching to see those two teams in the bottom there when a lot of people were excited for their hopes. And then the NL West is what people expected. The Dodgers are at the top, the Rockies are at the bottom, and the Padres, Diamondbacks, and Giants are in the middle, all around the same thing, all going to be vying for potentially a wild card spot or two. I appreciate you guys for spending part of your Saturday with me. I again apologize for the audio issues. I was really looking forward to telling that story and putting in the time with it, because it truly is amazing. But I will leave a link in the bio to the Sabre summary, which has some extra details that I left out, but I used it as part of my notes to go along with the box score and different newspaper write-ups that I was able to find for it. Hope you guys enjoy this beautiful weekend of baseball, and I will catch you guys next Solo Shot Saturday. Peace.